Recording in progress.
Chair Hunt, it's 9 o'clock, but I'll defer to you when you want to get started. We're still missing 2 commissioners.
Okay,
So if you'd like, we'll give them a few more minutes before we get started.
thank you, Joe. Let's do that.
And those joining us virtually, we'll get started in a few minutes. So I appreciate your patience. So we're just missing one more commissioner. But in any event, Chair, we do have a quorum. So whenever you want to get started.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to the August LAFCO meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. Mr. Serrano, can you do the roll call for us?
I'll actually defer to our LAFCO analyst to do the roll call this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Officer. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Roger Anderson. Commissioner Justin Cummings is not here. Vice Chair Manu Koenig is not here. Commissioner Rochelle Lather.
Present.
Commissioner Eduardo Montesino.
Here.
Commissioner Alan Timms.
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Ed Banks.
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Zach Friend is not here. Chair John Hunt.
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Fred Keeley is not here. That is a roll call, Mr. Executive Officer.
Chair, we do have a quorum of
Thank you.
5 voting members at this moment. And if Supervisor Koenig arrives, we'll have 6. But again, we have a quorum.
Thank you. And Executive Officer Serrano, do you have a report for us?
Thank you, Chair. Just as a reminder for the commission and members of the public, we are conducting this meeting as a hybrid. Meaning commissioners will be here in person unless they meet the criteria of they're ill or out for a work-related event. Our legal counsel and members of the public have the option to join us in person or virtually. For those joining us that would like to speak on any agenda item this morning, they have an option to speak virtually or in person. Each member of the public will have up to 3 minutes to provide comments on the agenda item. Once you get to 1 minute, we will remind you of your time. And then once that's over, we will request that you wrap up your comments. For those joining us virtually, you can press on the raise hand icon on the Zoom webinar. If you're joining us by conference call, you can press *9 to raise your hand. And for those joining us in person, you could go to the podium and state your name and have up to 3 minutes to speak. Chair, that concludes the executive officer's message. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Does anyone in the public or any commissioners have any questions about meeting procedures? Okay, hearing none. I'll move to the next agenda item, which is adoption of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes.
I'll move approval. I'll second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Timms, seconded by Commissioner Jim Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Abstentions?
I will abstain.
One abstention from Commissioner Roger Anderson. All in favor? Oh, we did that. Sorry. Okay. Next.
A while.
Chair, just for clarification, would Commissioner Koenig, who just arrived, would you be voting on the minutes? Aye. Thank you. So this motion passes with the 5 vote and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to open the floor to public comments on any items that are not on the agenda. Please state your name and you have 3 minutes for public comment.
Hello, my name is Laura Chatham, and I haven't been here before, but I was told that this is the group that works this county and the city together. Hello, Manu. I thank you for being here. And I just wanted to, they tell me that you all are the people that need to work together, the city and the county, with both Santa Cruz and Watsonville, to get a 24/7 walk-in shelter for the winter. I was on the extreme, I was one of the outreach workers for the extreme weather shelter for the unhoused last winter. And Dr. Ratner did a fantastic, wonderful job. I really thank him, Dr. Ratner, with Housing for Health, running the shelters, but they had to guess when the weather was going to occur. And we went out some nights and told people that even though it's pouring down rain right now and they need a place to go right now, that tomorrow we would have a shelter open. So that was a lot of trauma for us. Also, so we've been asking to consider using some of the funds that we understand 4 million has come to the city that will be going to housing matters, and perhaps some of that could be used. Dr. Ratner told us $350,000 would buy us a shelter for 6 months in Santa Cruz, and then another $350,000 for one in Watsonville. So for the total of $700,000, which is so small compared to, and the advantage too with this is that people coming out of the jails at night, they have trouble with recidivism. We went and spoke to the chief of Creatus at the jail, and he says that, you know, they're working really hard to end recidivism, and what they would really like us, if we have some place for people to go in the middle of the night, whenever they really need to go someplace, that this would be a really good, helpful solution. So my number one ask is for the 24/7 walk-in shelter, and it would be great if we could do it for the whole year, but if it's just the 6 months of winter, that would be okay too. The other thing I would like everybody to consider is, could we possibly consider purchasing homes instead of paying landlords all this money to house people and then they're out in the street again, because the landlords are charging very, very high rents, and we could, for the money, buy homes and do halfway houses like we did back in the 80s and 90s that were working really well. So that's just a second thing. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you for your work. My name is Becky Steinbrunner. I live in rural Aptos. I have a number of things I'd like to talk with you about this morning. The first is that LAFCO needs to be holding every 2 years an event that addresses water issues in the county. This is part of the LAFCO policy on page 113. I have made a copy of this and we'll submit it for correspondence. I have asked that the County Water Advisory Commission partner with LAFCO to help move this along. I think it is timely. In fact, this afternoon at 4 o'clock, the County Water Advisory Commission will be meeting just next door in the Redwood Conference Room, and will present an in-depth workshop on the county permitting, well permitting process. It's being updated to address effects on nearby streams. And it's an incredibly important thing. The well ordinance has not been updated since 2009. That event will be recorded, but again, that's 4 o'clock today. So I have asked that in July, I wrote Sierra Ryan, the staff member for the commission, and asked that the commission discuss partnering with the LAFCO to make the every 2-year event that has not happened since 2018 happen very soon. The Commission on the Environment is holding regularly scheduled events. They had one last Wednesday to address the county's climate adaptation and impact plan, and that would be a very good forum. I was here last Wednesday and it was a packed room. There was an issue, there was a presentation on water. So I asked that LAFCO consider partnering with also the Commission on the Environment. The next thing I want to talk about is that Scotts Valley Fire has absorbed the Branciforte Fire District, as you know. What is concerning to me is that the Scotts Valley Fire Board voted not to insure the Branciforte Fire Station. It is closed. They're not going to insure it because the premium to insure it, being it in a higher fire risk zone than other Scotts Valley facilities, is too much money, $25,000 a year. It was stated that if something were to happen to the station, the district would go to the Branciforte Fire residents and ask them to fund restoration. I have a problem with that. So I will submit this communication now, and thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Is there anyone online?
No, Chair, there isn't any request to address the commission at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our first public hearing item, which is the Santa Cruz Port District Service and Sphere Review. Mr. Serrano, do you have a report?
Thank you, Chair. I have a brief presentation. As the commission knows, state law requires LAFCO to conduct service reviews for all the cities and special districts in the county, including the Port District. Our last service review was done back in August of 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So they were due for a new service review. That draft report is attached to your agenda packet. For today's purposes, I just want to summarize staff's key findings in that report. The first key finding is that this district, unlike other special districts like water or sewer, they provide services to any other guests, so not just their constituents. So anyone that wants to utilize the services by the Port Districts have the ability to. So it's very similar to healthcare districts where they can provide services beyond their jurisdictional boundary. So that's unique about the Port District. Next is that they are financially sound. In fact, LAFCO staff analyzed their financial statements from 2023 back to 2013. And each year they ended their fiscal year with a surplus. And what's more impressive is that they do not rely on property taxes. Their primary source of revenue is charges for services from their port. Third is that they have an active multi-agency agreement with the county and the city of Santa Cruz. Again, they do not receive any property taxes. In exchange, they are receiving services from the county and the city. They also provide marine rescue services to the county and city. That agreement is automatically renewed every year and this has been in place since the early 1990s. So staff is recommending does it need to be revisited, or can it continue being renewed every year without any changes? So that's something that staff recommended that the Port District coordinate with the county and the city to see if there's any need to update that ongoing agreement. The fourth key finding is that this district's website is very transparent. In fact, out of the 20 benchmarks that LAFCO uses, to determine if their website is transparent, they hit every single mark. So that is something that the district should be proud of. They've won awards from other statewide organizations because of their transparency. So that's a really good example for other special districts to kind of mirror. And lastly, staff has determined that their sphere boundary should be updated. As you can see on your screen, the map, their sphere boundary is coterminous or exactly the same as their jurisdictional boundary. But if we look closely, we'll notice that the city of Santa Cruz, a portion of it is outside its jurisdictional boundary. And I have a couple of arrows here. So you can see the ones in red, that part of the city is outside its jurisdictional boundary. But if you look at the bottom left of the map, that little island of the city is part of the jurisdictional boundary. So it's a little odd. So staff is recommending that we amend the sphere boundary to include the entire city of Santa Cruz. That just for clarification, for more transparency, and making sure that all the residents of the city have the opportunity and right to vote or run for the Port District Board should they choose to. And that will be consistent with state law and also their recent transition from at-large to zone-based elections. So those are the key findings that LAFCO identified in this report. Staff is recommending that the commission find this report to be exempt from CEQA, that it meets the requirements under LAFCO law when analyzing the service and sphere of the district, and that the commission adopt the draft resolution. That way it covers the conditions, including but not limited to updating the sphere boundary to include all of the city of Santa Cruz. Now, I will note that amending the sphere does not automatically require the district to annex. At the end, it is up to the district to initiate that should they choose. But as a sphere is meant to be a planning tool. In the event that the district would like to expand its services or expand its jurisdictional boundary, that's probably the right area to do so. But again, it's up to the district to make that determination. I will acknowledge the port director, Ms. Holland McLaury, who was instrumental in completing this report. I'll also acknowledge that we do have two commissioners from the Port District here with us today, Chair Reed, as well as Commissioner Goddard. So I really appreciate their assistance in completing this report. Last thing before I defer back to the chair, staff was invited to present this draft report to the Port Commission at their last board meeting. We had a really good discussion, and they were in support of the findings of the report. I did not get any opposition from the sphere amendment request, but again, this is something that it makes sense for LAFCO staff, and I believe that the commission may end up in that same conclusion. So that with that, I'll defer to the chair, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. I'd like to ask if there's any public comment on this item.
Thank you, Becky Steinbrunner. I agree that it makes sense to incorporate these areas in the city of Santa Cruz. Why is the city of Capitola not being included? Thank you.
Chair, really good question, and I'm happy to answer that. So under the Principal Act for the Port District, the law allows a Port District to only have one municipality. So that's why the city of Santa Cruz is part of the district, but only one's the limit. So they can't have Capitola as part of their district.
Thank you. Any other comment? Is there anything online?
There are no requests at this time, Chair.
Any questions or comments from commissioners? Mr. Anderson.
Well, population in the areas of I believe a lot of the agreement. Curious about population.
I don't have the exact number, but there are a number of landowners. It also includes a portion of the campus for the university, but the exact population number, I don't have it in front of me.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? I'll entertain a motion on the recommended actions.
I'll make a motion to recommended action.
Moved
Second that.
moved by Commissioner Jim Anderson, seconded by Commissioner Montesino. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, in other business, we have an update on the dissolution of Rec District 2049. Thank you, commissioners, for joining us. Okay, thank you.
Officer, he did a really great job on that report.
Thank you.
Chair, I do have a brief presentation. So this commission approved the dissolution of this reclamation district back in June. As part of that approval, state law requires LAFCO to conduct a protest proceedings. At the end of the day, even though the commission approves any change of organizations, the residents have the final say. I'm happy to report that during that protest proceeding, LAFCO received 0 petitions of opposition. We held our protest hearing last week on the 31st. That was the last opportunity for any residents to voice their opposition. Again, no one expressed any opposition for this dissolution. So we, assuming this commission adopts the draft resolution, which ratifies the results, LAFCO staff will then record the dissolution. The date of recordation is the effective date. So in other words, the day that we record the certificate of completion for the dissolution is a day that the reclamation district is no longer in existence. We're currently coordinating with the 2 affected agencies, meaning PV Water and the reclamation district, to determine what date we want to record. It can be as soon as tomorrow or later this month. But that's something that we're going to coordinate with the 2 agencies. But the next step is for this commission to adopt the draft resolution certifying the results of the protest proceeding. And Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public? Anything online? Questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommended actions.
I'll move to approve the recommended actions.
Moved by Commissioner Koenig,
Second.
second by Commissioner Timms.
No, it's the other way around.
around?
Yeah, either way.
Okay.
Just being.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, passes unanimously. All right, the next item is the Triton study, the feasibility study for the fire districts. Mr. Serrano, do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, not as brief, but I do have a presentation. As this commission may recall, we hired AP Triton to conduct a fires study that will look at the sphere boundaries for the existing fire districts. Before I go into the findings of that report and staff's recommendation, I kind of want to look back at what has transpired since us hiring AP Triton back in 2022. So let's see if it appears. So again, we hired AP Triton back in August of 2022. This was a result from our comprehensive countywide fire service review that we did back in October of 2021, which we requested that the fire districts develop an annexation plan for their sphere boundaries. So during our analysis of each district, a lot of their sphere boundaries were in place and nothing has happened, which I felt that defeated the purpose of sphere boundaries. I wanted it to reflect their future. So we requested that the districts look at their spheres and determine, does it really reflect where they may be in the future? What was interesting is that the district said, you know what, we wouldn't mind annexing these areas. In fact, sometimes we already provide services to these areas. But we were told that there's no money, there's no revenue there. So why would we assume more responsibility with any funding to offset those costs? So that led to LAFCO asking a question. But before I get to that, PV Fire took that one step further. So instead of just submitting an annexation plan, they submitted an application to annex everything in their sphere. So that plus our recommendations for the annexation plans really required us to really analyze, is there money available in these spheres? And also, what's the financial impact to CSA 48, which is operated by the county and is currently responsible for those areas in those sphere boundaries? So again, that's the reason why we hired AP Triton back in 2022. Since then, there's been a lot of progress being made in the fire world. One is that Central Fire and the city of Santa Cruz are currently in coordination to see if should there be some type of partnership between those 2 agencies. As you know, Central Fire currently provides services to the city of Capitola. So they're considering maybe doing a joint RFP to hire an outside consultant to see if it would make sense and beneficial to the residents if they were to have some type of merger. That started in July 2023. I'm happy to report that LAFCO is part of those discussions, and it's our understanding that a joint RFP will happen soon. Also, in December of 2023, we finalized and recorded the merger between Branson 40 and Scotts Valley. It was a reorganization. We dissolved Branson 40 Fire and annexed that dissolved area into Scotts Valley Fire. That's something that it was a multi-year effort, but it was successful. We, as part of this reorganization, we also created the Branson 40 Advisory Commission. That commission recently provided recommendations to Scotts Valley Fire to discontinue Measure T, which was being collected by Branson 40 to fund the fire station. That recommendation was approved by Scotts Valley Board, so that additional revenue has been discontinued. So again, that commission has been instrumental in providing guidance to Scotts Valley Fire. And I'm almost done with the recap. So also, PV Fire, as I mentioned, they submitted an annexation to LAFCO, but they're having some operational issues to the point that their recent budget, they had to reduce the level of service because they couldn't afford having 3 people on duty. So now they're down to 2. And based on their financial estimates, they may run out of money within less than 18 months from now. And so they looked at governance options. And the 2 that they looked at was maybe we go for a special tax in November, or another option is to dissolve and transfer responsibilities to CSA 48, which again is operated by the county. It is yet to be determined whether the county is willing and capable of assuming that large area. But again, this is something that LAFCO has been keeping a monitor of, and there needs to be some type of plan in place to address that issue. In more recent news, CSA 4, which covers the community of Pajaro Dunes, recently approved a new assessment, which is over $1,500 per unit that the residents are paying into. That is the highest benefit assessment in the county. They previously had the highest at $500 per unit. Now it's 3 times that amount. And that was majority approved it. It was like 75% of the residents approved it. But that's an outlier. I don't think that would happen anywhere else in the county. But again, that's just to show how much it costs just to have 3 people on duty 24/7. And those residents were willing to pay that amount. The question is, will other residents around the county pay something similar? Very difficult. And more recently, Felton Fire is currently having some internal issues as well. They're on their 3rd interim fire chief. They're currently contracting or negotiating to contract with CAL FIRE for operational services. They did reach out to all the fire districts in the county for potential partnerships, and CAL FIRE is the one that has provided them the best option at this time. So again, a lot has happened since we hired AP Tran back in 2022. So what did that report provide us, and what are the next steps? So I just want to show you a map. We currently have 12 fire agencies in the county. The city of Santa Cruz and Watsonville have their own fire department. We have CSA 48 and CSA 4, which are operated by the county. And then we have the remaining 8, which are the independent fire districts. Now, this report looked at the sphere boundaries for each fire district. And just to give you an example, here is Ben Lomond Fire. The area in red is their service area. The areas in green is being provided by CSA 48. But you can see their sphere includes almost 500 parcels. Another example, here's Boulder Creek Fire. Again, their service area is in purple. Their sphere boundary includes, again, almost 500 parcels that's currently being served by CSA 48. One more example, here's PB Fire, and you can see that their sphere boundary includes not only a portion of CSA 48, but also CSA 4. So what does that mean? Well, AP try and determine that there's not that much money within each sphere for each individual fire district. You know, it may have enough to cover the expenses to providing services. So right here, you can see there's a table showing the number of parcels and the potential fundings available within the parcel. So individually, not that much with the exclusion of PB Fire, which is $3 million. But in total, on the flip side, if those areas were to be annexed, that means that same area would be detached from CSA 48. That means they will lose $3.8 million. So it's no surprise that the county is having difficulty supporting annexations because they're losing almost $4 million. And again, CSA 48 is not a fire department. It's a funding mechanism. It contracts with CAL FIRE. So they need every single cent to pay for that contract to provide services to these areas. So the question is, it's a funding mechanism and it affects them if they do any type of reorganization. What can we do to ensure that we're providing the best level of service to these residents when the status quo is not sustainable? Right now, the county is negotiating with CAL FIRE. That's an issue right now. So what can we do to make sure that we can have a more sustainable level of services for the area within CSA 48? So LAFCO staff took the information for the AP trend study. We coordinated with county and CAL FIRE, and we determined, what if we convert CSA 48 into a standalone independent fire protection district? For purposes of this discussion, I'm calling it the Santa Cruz County Fire Protection District. Kind of has a little ring to it, but again, this is just an example. What would happen if we convert it into an independent fire district? LAFCO staff has determined that there's some benefits. One is there'll be more representation. So right now, all the residents within CSA 48 are governed by the Board of Supervisors rather than their own individual board directors. So if we would convert it to an own independent fire district, the residents would have the ability to not only vote, but to run for the board seat. And under the Principal Act for fire districts, it could be a 5-member seat or a 7-member seat. And as part of this transition, we would convert the at-large election process to a zone-based. So that's something that we could do with this district, so more representation. Second is more transparency. The numbers for CSA 4 and CSA 48 in the AP Triton study was difficult to find. So it kind of gets lost in all the other budgetary documents from the county because the county is responsible for a lot of services. So there'll be more transparency because this district would only focus on fire protection. And so their revenue and expenditures will be easy to identify. There'll be more accountability. As I just mentioned, the county is responsible for regional services beyond fire protection. They are responsible for housing, to address homelessness, to address transportation and social justice. So they are stretched thin to begin with. If we convert this into a fire district, that board of directors and their staff, their main focus will just be fire protection and emergency services. That's it. So there's more accountability there. And finally, there's more sustainability. As I mentioned earlier, PB Fire is running out of money. And it's unknown if the county is willing and capable of providing services. If we establish an independent fire district, they will be equipped to assume responsibilities in the South County. If you see this map right here, CSA 48, the way it's currently structured, it's strategically positioned to be an alternative option for any struggling fire agency in the county because it is in the right position. So if PB Fire were to have to be dissolved, this new fire district can assume and have the capabilities of providing services. If other agencies like in the Valley, for example, Felton, if they determine that that would be a viable option, this new district can take over the service responsibility. So again, it sounds good right now when I'm like, okay, it makes sense. But the next thing is to actually have it in writing and kind of lay out the groundwork of how is this going to work? What's the governance structure going to be? Is it going to be a 5-member board, a 7-member board? What's going to be the level of services? Who's going to be providing the services? Is it going to continue under CAL FIRE? What's going to be the operations? All those questions need to be answered. And that's why staff is requesting that this commission direct us to coordinate with the county and CAL FIRE to develop a transition plan. This transition plan would answer all those questions and lay the groundwork. And hopefully when that is completed, the county would initiate a reorganization process. This is not going to happen overnight. This is going to be a multi-year process, but the first step is to develop this plan. And if the plan makes sense, then the next step is to initiate the reorganization. And if we get support from this commission today, I believe that we can get this done within 18 months to be prepared in the event that PV fire does indeed need to be dissolved and need to transfer responsibility to someone else. And rather than having the county holding the bag, we'll have a new fire district that will be equipped to taking over those services. So that's a lot of information I just provided to the commission and to the public. But again, staff is recommending that we get direction from the commission to work with the county and CAL FIRE to develop this transition plan, to provide the information in writing and use that as a vehicle to have further discussions about the future of CSA 48 and fire protection in this county. Chair, with that, I'll conclude my presentation and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. As usual, that was a clear representation of a complex situation. I really appreciate that. Do we have comments from the public?
Thank you, LAFCO commissioners. Michael Beaton. I'm the Director of General Services for the County of Santa Cruz. I'm also the county contract administrator for our county fire contract with CAL FIRE. About a year ago, we contracted to do a draft master plan for county fire. In that draft master plan is a recommendation that we really look at the governance of county fire, which includes CSA 48 and CSA 4. So the recommendation today is in concurrence with the county fire master plan draft that we plan on taking to the board in August or September of this year. In that recommendation, we also had our fire department advisory commission look at the county fire master plan and the current governance structure. They are making a recommendation for the board of supervisors to work with LAFCO on the exploration of convening county fire as an independent fire district. So from staff's perspective, we are supportive of the recommendation presented to your board today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good presentation. My name is Becky Steinbrunner. I live in the boundaries of CSA 48 and have been actively involved in a lot of issues regarding that for a long time. And I also attend the county's fire department advisory commission meetings. Unfortunately, I missed the last one. But in that agenda for the last fire department advisory commission, I did not see a link to the AP Triton study. So I don't know how the and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Beaton, but I don't know how the commissioners could really, with a well-informed position, recommend this go forward. I do know that they are in support of better governance. It is a problem. The Board of Supervisors is officially the board of directors for Santa Cruz County Fire. They refuse to take responsibility for that. And it has been a very difficult situation. So, but I want to ask, why is this being rushed? This AP Triton report took 2 years to make. It's 321 pages. Why rush it? Why not continue it and allow the LAFCO to really have time to digest it and then move forward with the Board of Supervisors? I ask that you continue this to the next LAFCO hearing and make time to really read this report. I also think that the county does not give money to support a county fire department, as I understand it. The money that funds that comes from CSA 48, and there are 2 taxes. There's the one that we are taxed 2 fire flow units per structure. And then there's the more recent one funded that was passed, a special benefit assessment tax in 2020, wherein not only the structures were taxed, but also the land. And that is under legal challenge because under Government Code 50078.4, you cannot have a special benefit assessment for fire suppression in the state responsibility area. So we were also told when that passed that that would be providing excellent staff funding to have a 3-person response, and that's great. And it also allowed the county to sign a 3-year contract with CAL FIRE, and we were told it was a cost saving. After that, since that, it's been a yearly contract negotiation with CAL FIRE, and CAL FIRE recently told the FDAC that this is not enough money. So we also get,
Time is up, Ms. Becky.
may I have one more minute?
If you can wrap up your comments.
All
that'd be
right,
great.
thank you. I support the change in governance, definitely. I support the increased transparency and accountability. No proposition state sales tax safety money goes to fund county fire or any fire district. 0.5% is pushed through as a pass-through through county fire to go to the Fire Chiefs Association, but that's all. And this is millions of dollars. So I think it would behoove the LAFCO to also examine that possibility of using Proposition 172 money and coordinate with the Board of Supervisors about that. Thank you for this good report. Please continue this until next month. Don't rush it. It's too important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Chair, I don't see any other requests here in the audience. We do have 2 questions or 2 hands raised on Zoom. So we're going to start with Chief Maxwell from Zayante Fire. Chief, you've been asked to be unmuted.
Good morning. I have a question for the, good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I was curious as to whether or not there was consideration, and if not, why not, of a reorganization, merger, or annexation to an existing and independent special district, recognizing that the large lift that's required to form a governance body and an operational framework for emergency response in the county.
Thank you, Chief. Is that all your comments?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Serrano, do you have any information related
Sure,
to
and
that?
I can also address Ms. Becky Steinbrenner, but I'll start with Chief Maxwell. That's a fair question. Looking at the existing sphere boundaries for the independent fire districts in the county, they're rather small in comparison. LAFCO staff, based on our countywide fire report that we did in 2021, based on the findings in this AP trend study, it'd be difficult to identify any fire district at this time that's equipped of taking over this large amount of territory that's in the county that's currently being served by CSA 48. That doesn't mean that in the future that could be an option. I think right now with this proposed reorganization, it would help us get to a better level of service and better representations that I mentioned earlier. But that question about can another district take over or be the successor agency, that's something that can definitely be considered in the future. But I don't think that there's any district at this point that's equipped of taking over this large area at this time. In regards to Ms. Steinbrenner's comment about this being rushed, yes, it took 2 years to get this information. This information was never relatively available until now. We're not requesting that the commission initiate the reorganization or encourage the county and CAL FIRE to start this process. We're requesting that the commission allow us to continue conversations with the county and CAL FIRE to develop a plan. That plan is going to take months to complete. We're going to bring that back to the commission and provide the findings of that plan. And then it'll be up to the county and CAL FIRE to determine whether or not they take the next step of considering the reorganization. And that reorganization will take at least a year, if not more, because we not only need to get support from the county and CAL FIRE, but we need to get support and buy-in from the affected residents. It needs to make sense to them. There's no point of starting this process if we have opposition from the residents. So we need to hear from them. So as part of this process, we're going to host workshops and outreach efforts to ensure that we articulate the benefits if indeed we determine that this does make sense. That's, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be a multi-year process. So we're not rushing this at all. We're at the preliminary stage of step 1. Please direct staff to work on this, and then we'll provide more information to you. So I don't believe that this is being rushed at all. We're just starting at the beginning at this point. That being said, Chair, there's one more request, and that is Mr. Charlie Eady. He's from a representative from CSA 4 in the Pajaro Dunes area. So, Mr. Charlie, you've been asked to be unmuted.
Hi there. Thank you. I'd like to say a few things on behalf of Pajaro Dunes. First of all, we did pass this assessment increase, and when Mr. Serrano mentioned a unit is 1,500. That's true, but each house is 2 units, so the residents there are paying more than $3,000 or will be in order to have the 3-person staffing and the high level of service, or at least the most acceptable level of service to keep their fire rating. So that is very important to CSA 4 residents. Second thing, Joe has said in the past that any money that's generated by CSA 4 would stay within CSA 4. And I just want to make sure that that's the case. And also, CSA 4 Pajaro Dunes adamantly opposed the merger that was proposed by PV Fire. Because it just seemed like there was such a difference in commitment to fire service and paying for it between Pajaro Dunes and the rest of the district. So we would also oppose any kind of merger with CSA 48. So basically, what we're asking here is that CSA 4 continue to operate the way it has been under Board of Supervisors, and with its independent funding and with the close collaboration of the Pajaro Dunes Homeowners Association and the county. So, and the AP Trident study, as Joe mentioned in the report, seemed to indicate that all of the all of the CSA 4 money would be available for any other district who merged with CSA 4. So that is not the case. At least that's what we've been told. So I want to make sure that's clear. And I'd like to know for sure what is intended for the next steps in this CSA 48 analysis in regards to CSA 4, presumably, and hopefully it's irrelevant to CSA 4. Thank you.
Chair, thank you, Mr. Eady, for your comments. Again, another fair point. And so CSA 4 and CSA 48 are 2 separate dependent special districts. They're both maintained and operated by the county. They're under one contract with CAL FIRE. So there's a little confusion with that, but they are 2 separate entities. And so what we're proposing as part of this transition plan is to reorganize CSA 48 and CSA 48 only. But again, that transition plan needs to address what happens to CSA 4. Can the county continue and maintain that current structure? And CSA 4 is 250 residents. It's a fairly small area. So that's something that we would need to address in the transition plan. But as Mr. Eady mentioned, this reorganization consideration or concept only involves CSA 48. It does not involve CSA 4. And I've acknowledged their position about any reorganization with PV Fire. That's something that they've been adamant that they're against. And I understand that. And also the PV Fire application was recently withdrawn from the PV Fire board because of their internal issues and their future concerns that's happening right now. So that has no longer on the table. So this transition plan, if approved by the commission to move forward, does not include CSA 4. That's a separate entity. But I appreciate Mr. Eady for allowing me to clarify that. And Chair, there are no other requests online. I don't see any requests here in the audience, so I'll defer to you to close public comments.
Thank you. I'll close public comments and open it up to commissioners' questions or comments. Commissioner Roger Anderson.
comments. First one is on the report itself. Some typos in it that should be corrected. The other thing, which is probably more serious, question of some of the financial things. Seem to be in better shape than CS4. But not sure it's possible to fix those for this report. It'd be nice to at least have editorial comments. We had trouble interpreting the other thing that I'm concerned about is basically how much budget we're going to need. Project anticipated being split among the different agencies. Even more time do you think that you and
Sure.
Finally, I think I agree with Steinbrenner that have to be a little more time.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. So we do have a representative from AP Tran joining us, Mr. Clay Stewart. I'll defer to him if we could provide comments on any discrepancies or typos in the study, if they can do some edits to it as they finalize it. So I'll defer to him. Mr. Stewart, are you available to answer that question or that comment?
I am available, of course, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to hear his comments very much.
So his comment about the report is he's found some typos and he has some there's some discrepancies on some of the financial tables. So is that something that we could provide you, and perhaps you can make some edits as you finalize this report?
We can certainly take a look at the thoughts and comments. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. And the other question that you had, Commissioner, about the cost and timing. So this is something that LAFCO staff has deemed a priority just because of what's happening with the other fire agencies and their struggles. And so unlike consolidations where state law requires a feasibility study to be completed, that's not the case for reorganizations. As you recall, when we did the reorganization for Branson 40 and Scottsdale Fire, we did that plan for service document in-house. We coordinated with the affected fire districts in LAFCO, and we developed that report in-house. That's something that we would like to do here with this transition plan, is LAFCO staff spearheading this effort with coordination with the county and CAL FIRE to develop the report in-house. That's something that, again, we deemed a priority. I think that based on the projects that we were working on, we've earmarked plenty of time to complete this report. And again, this is of importance. So I don't see this affecting any other projects that we're currently working on.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Commissioner Montesino, please.
Yeah, can you put the slide back where you had all the districts? Or
sure.
That's a lot of districts.
Yes.
What would help this process along? You said 18-month process, and talking to the community gives us an enough time frame. But what about, like you said, what SA4? Because that's another issue. How can we, and you also mentioned the city of Santa Cruz talking to Central Fire. It seems like it's merging or reorganizations. Like, is it going to come to that in your view? Like I said, based on cities merging with other districts or county consolidating, services.
Yep. So good point. And this is something that I've said before. We currently have 12 fire agencies in this county. If we were to reset and create fire agencies today, would we have 12? I think the answer would be no. But this is the cards that we currently have. And how do we become more efficient? We initially had over 13 fire agencies. Central and Aptos La Selva consolidated a few years ago. We were able to merge Branciforte and Scotts Valley. So we are slowly getting there. But in my 16 years with LAFCOs around the state, what's been successful with these fire-related reorganizations, it's when it's not a top-down approach where LAFCO says you have to consolidate or you have to merge. Those agencies have to determine that for themselves. They're the masters of their own destiny. And I think that's that secret sauce where the agencies are starting to realize that maybe we should look into alternative governance options and structures. And LAFCO is in a position where I truly feel that they trust LAFCO, that we're not here as a threat. We're not here forcing anything. We're here. We want them to succeed, but we also want them to look at, is the current way the best way you can provide services? And if not, let's explore other options. And so to your point, Commissioner, is yes, we have a lot of fire agencies, but they're talking to one another. This is the fact that we were able to merge Branciforte and Scotts Valley, the fact that we're talking with the county and CAL FIRE about potentially converting CSA 48 to an independent fire district. If we would ask that question 10 years ago, it would be a non-starter. But we're in a different world right now. And so the fire districts, the boards, their fire chiefs, they're realizing that maybe looking at other options should be considered. So we're getting there. It's slowly but surely. But when we work as having these strategic partnerships and having LAFCO as a resource to the agencies rather than a threat to them, I think that's where we're getting successful outcomes. So this is something where LAFCO wants to continue being a champion of having these discussions, and I think we're getting there. And we're also discussions with the cities. We're also discussing with Watsonville and looking at their future. And the fact that we're building that relationship allows us to have really good conversations about what's the future for Watsonville.
Well, thank you very much.
Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Do we know what the budget for CSA 48 is?
The last I checked, it's around $4 million, if I'm not mistaken, for CSA 48. And
$4 million.
I'll defer to our county rep
I
here.
was going to say Central's is 40 million. So.
Yeah, I was going to say that's cheap.
I'm off.
Thank you, Michael Beaton, Director of General Services. The CSA budget is about $6.8 million, depending on how you look at it. We do take the luxury of the state does pay for fire coverage for the CSA 48 area for about 7 months of the year. And then the county CSA 48 funds about 5 months of the year. Plus, in addition, we also fund year-round services such as fire marshal services, dispatch services, on behalf of the county, but the state actually pays for the coverage of the fire stations for 7 months of the year. That's why our budget's only about $6.8 million for CSA 48.
Is there, in the past, if I remember right, the CSA 48 has been underfunded?
In the past, in 2020, in 2019, 2020, we did a special benefit assessment that was approved by the voters of CSA 48. That additional influx of cash into the CSA 48 coffers, if you would say, has allowed it to actually grow a little bit. In addition, the state has had some additional cost increases as well as some state changes. So right now, if you were to ask me, I would say it's about flat with the funding that comes in and the costs that are actually going out.
Does the county have a plan? Should the plan with special districts take place to augment that with something so that, because their rates go up every year? Yes.
Yes, both CSA 48 is funded in part by property taxes and 2 special benefit assessments that the voters approved. Those special benefit assessments do increase by CPI index, as well as the property taxes increase based on normal property tax growth. So as far as the county, would the county have a plan to augment? I don't think so at this time, but this is all part of a feasibility that we would like to do and explore to make sense, to make sure that this does make sense. So I know this is something that we're supportive of, to actually explore what the impacts might be to CSA 48 and if it's actually a viable option.
Okay. As a board member of the Felton Fire Protection District, I mean, I get asked all the time, what's your fallback if this? As he brought up in our study, is our problem is money, basically, because we don't have the volunteer structure anymore to support our budgets. We're done, started 50 plus 60 years ago. And now that we're forced to hire more people, it's taking all the available money to support the district because we can't, the volunteers we have trouble covering because we do almost 1,000 calls a year. And so it creates a whole issue, and most districts are kind of in that place now. So I get often, so what happens, what's your contingency or fallback? And ours in this particular case is to become, have an Amador contract with CAL FIRE. If that were to not go through, I don't know, because the volunteers just don't come. We have been a training ground for professional fire services for numerous years, where we get people dedicated for 2 or 3 years, and then they move on to a paid position. Most paid departments don't want their paid men to be volunteers as well as paid people. So it's a very complicated future for everybody. Unfortunately, like in Felton, I have the neighbor next door thought we're a paid fire department, and we're kind of paid now, but we only have paid people to cover the daytime response 7 days a week. So thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
I'd like to move the staff recommendation for appropriate action.
Second.
Any further discussion? I would like to ask Commissioner Roger Anderson, given your concerns with the feasibility study, if you are suggesting an amendment to the recommended actions.
I think that we need a work study group or something like that to talk about this with a little bit larger and a little less pressure on us. So I would actually like to propose that we delay this discussion until at least our next meeting and move on from there. Because the objectives of this are still not very clear to me. That's really the problem I have.
So the recommended actions are to receive and file the study, and then the second one is to direct staff to work on a transition plan. And you would like to continue both of those. That's your recommendation. Any discussion on Roger Anderson's suggestion, Mr. Carney?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. But I think as Director Serrano laid out, this is a very long process. I mean, and I hear what Commissioner Roger Anderson has said, and members of the public about, wanting to wait longer before we begin it. But at the same time, I mean, there is a certain amount of urgency with some of the fire districts within the county having very real fiscal challenges that they're going to need to find some way to address. And so we're not making any decisions by, authorizing staff to begin looking at this transition plan, having discussions with county staff directly about this. I mean, I'm sure there'll be other public hearings. I mean, as was mentioned, the county will be, the Board of Supervisors will be reviewing the review of county fire, that strategic plan. I'm sure this discussion will come up, and there might very well be some explicit authorization from the board to proceed with this as well. So, I mean, I think this seems like the very logical next step, having looked at the study before us. I don't see a world where we choose a different next step or not to take this next step a month from now. It's really only beginning to take that step rather than necessarily rushing to a conclusion. And of course, what it's really doing, what we're saying is, we're not telling anyone to merge with anyone else. We're just looking at how can CSA 48 actually become a better managed area and create a structure that, if more mergers are desirable or necessary in the future, we're facilitating that. I mean, one thing that came to my mind looking at this is, I don't think that there's anything that says, for example, if CSA 48 were to become an independent special district, it doesn't have to have 5 directors. It could have 7 or 11, and so that suggests to me, well, it's helpful to start looking at this now. I mean, after all, you could have one director for sort of that represents each one of the current fire districts or the ones that should choose to merge in the future. So, I mean, I honestly think the more time we have with this, beginning the process now, and the more time we have for that process, the better. And so I'm supportive of the actions today.
Chair, just one suggestion for the commission is perhaps the two commissioners that made the motion and second, maybe include a condition that LAFCO staff bring an outline of the transition plan at our next meeting in September. That way we can get started, we can provide more information to the commission. That's something I'm just as a consideration, or continue your motion as is.
When you say an outline of the transition plan, you mean sort of an outline of the process of you know, kind of reviewing the
what's the transition plan going to cover, and that way the commission has more time to digest this report, but give direction to staff to get started, provide more information at our next meeting, maybe have a draft timeline of how long it's going to take to complete the transition plan, what's the proposed outline of the reorganization if that were to be initiated, and just identify those milestones. That way we can get started, provide more information to the commission at our next meeting, and that way we can have further discussion on this.
I'll withdraw my amendment and substitute something along the lines that Director Serrano has done.
It's fine. Yeah, we can do that.
Do you want to repeat the?
Sure. Yeah, that's certainly amenable to me as the second as well.
Okay. Okay, so I think the motion was by Commissioner Timms. No, did I have it backwards again? Oh, it's Montesino. Okay. And second by.
I mean, I appreciate the credit, but not me this time.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Any further discussion?
So just to clarify, I think the motion is to accept and receive and file the feasibility study, and then direct staff to return at our next meeting with an outline and including a timeline for a transition plan.
Yes, just for clarification, you're absolutely, so receive and file the feasibility study, direct staff to coordinate with the county and CAL FIRE to work on a transition plan with the condition that staff come back at our next meeting with an outline of the transition plan and proposed timeline, something along those lines.
Can I say something?
Yes, Rochelle.
I've been trying not to. The report was really hard for someone to digest that's not a fire person, okay? And I'm an engineer, so I'm not stupid, but maybe I am. Can you also include some kind of summary that explains it, not so detailed? Because it was really hard to follow what even was the purpose in a way. But no, I don't know if purpose is the right word, but I was having trouble because there were so many tables and so many, so much information that I'm not that comfortable with.
Sure.
So I think that might help us, at least me.
Yeah, that's something that staff can provide for the September hearing as part of the staff report with the draft outline of the report and timeline. I could kind of give a synopsis of that report that's easy to follow. So I can include that in my staff report, or our staff report.
Commissioner Timms.
Just one more comment. Thank you, Chair. I would also like to request that Commissioner Roger Anderson's comments around inaccuracy of tables and typos actually get addressed and the report recirculated with those corrected as well, please.
My only comment on that is that it's a very massive report. And I am not paid to do the whole report, but I certainly would like to, I will make some of the more obvious things that I've seen to give those to Mr. Serrano. But I don't expect to find all of the problems.
I agree with that. I think just the obvious things that you noticed would be good just to get comment on, and perhaps the AP Triton can also just look at those in context and just make sure as an overview they correct some of those things.
Okay. So as a procedural matter, we're receiving and filing this report as opposed to approving the report.
Correct. Yeah, this is not LAFCO's report, so we're just receiving and filing the report conducted by AB Tri-N, and we'll relay any comments that we have or edits or corrections to AB Tri-N. If indeed they provide an updated version of their report, we'll include it as part of the agenda packet for September when we discuss this once again.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is the grand jury report and the LAFCO response.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Serrano.
Chair. Very brief. The grand jury develops multiple publications and reports. One of the more recent ones analyzed the road maintenance in unincorporated areas, and they requested that LAFCO provide comments on 2 of their findings and 1 recommendation. This draft letter provides the commission our response to those findings and recommendations. So the one that I do want to just spend a couple seconds on is they did request that LAFCO conduct a service review for CSA 9 Zone D. Our last service review for that district was back in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. So we're scheduled to present a new service review for CSA 9 and all of its zones, including Zone D, later in 2025. They're requesting that the service review be done earlier in March of 2025. So staff believes that we have enough bandwidth to move that to March. So we will fulfill that request by the grand jury. Again, Chair, this is a draft comment letter, and staff is recommending that you approve the letter. That way we can send our response back to the grand jury before their deadline, which is later this month. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll open the floor to public comment on this item.
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I noticed there's no copy of the agenda packet here today. So I'm very grateful for the grand jury's investigations. I think they do a great job. And their work on examining the road issues was timely and very well done, I thought. So I'm happy to hear that LAFCO's going to streamline and get a fear and service review for CSA 9D. I request that you also consider having a website or a link to the website where people can see the financial details of CSA 9D. These maintenance CSAs are very complex, and they get used, the money gets sent off for a lot of different things, but where it actually goes and how it's actually used, I think would go a long way to improving transparency for the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any public comments online?
There's no request at this time, Chair.
Open it up to the commissioners.
I'll make a motion for recommended action.
Motion by Commissioner Jim Anderson.
Second.
I think Commissioner Koenig won. Take it second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item is the Cal LAFCO Annual Conference. Mr. Serrano.
I think the next few agenda items I'll speed through. Our next annual conference will be held in October, from October 16th to the 18th. It's going to be hosted at the famous Tenaya Lodge in Yosemite. We currently have 2 board members attending the conference with staff, Commissioner Jim Anderson and Roger Anderson, so I appreciate their participation. Staff is recommending that we designate those 2 commissioners to be our voting and alternate. There's going to be an election held at the conference to appoint new board members. There's 2 seats for the coastal region. We are part of the coastal region. One is for the county and one's for the district. So any county representative here or district representative that's interested in being part of the Cal LAFCO board, there is a deadline to submit nominations or applications. No formal action is required by the board. So if anyone's interested, that's a district or county member, they could submit an application. They can coordinate with staff. That being said, we do need to designate the two commissioners to be a voting and alternate for that election later this year. We're also recommending that the commission approve our proposed nomination for a LAFCO award. We are nominating the Big Basin Water Company Governance Options Report that we did earlier this year that really kind of helped the court receiver. We identified Moonshot Missions, which is a nonprofit organization that's currently working on a forensic analysis of Big Basin water. So I think that warrants acknowledgement by CAL FIRE. So that's something that we're nominating this year. And finally, speaking of Moonshot Missions, your staff is scheduled to be a panelist for two sessions this year. One's a breakout session that looks at how do we improve our relationships with small water systems with LAFCO. And I think our proactive effort with Big Basin Water and the nonprofit organization is a good example. So staff has been tasked to lead that session, and we even invited the court receiver, Nicholas Jaber, to be a panelist, as well as J.M. Brown from Supervisor McPherson's office to be a panelist, as well as Ms. Lydia from Moonshot Missions. Because they're a nonprofit organizations, they do not have the funding in their budgets for traveling to a conference. Again, this is going to be in Yosemite. So as part of staff's recommendation, we're requesting that the commission approve paying or covering the expenses for their mileage to get to and from the conference and a one-night stay at the Yosemite Lodge. That will be less than $500. But that way they could be a part of the panel and explain their role with the Big Basin Water to the other LAFCOs around the state as part of this conference. So those are staff's recommendations, and Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll open it to public comment.
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I'm also a customer of a small water, privately owned water system, so I have great interest in the topic you just brought up, and it has been also discussed within the Santa Cruz County Water Advisory Commission meetings, that we really need to look at have a forensic study. How did it get to this? And it is timely because the state is has a big appetite now for consolidation of small water systems and increasing the regulations of them. So I support Santa Cruz County LAFCO paying for the expenses for Moonshot Mission to come and be part of this panel. I request that this panel presentation be recorded and links to it be given to the County Board of Supervisors and County Environmental Health and to the water commissions. I would appreciate that, and to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from commissioners? Commissioner Anderson.
I'd just like to make a motion to accept the recommendations. With addition, I would like to encourage more of my fellow commissioners to attend this meeting, are very important and useful. And lastly, I would like to nominate Jim Anderson as the voting member for the commission.
Yeah. I'll second. I'll beat you. Huh?
Moved by Commissioner Roger Anderson, seconded by Commissioner Rochelle Lather. Any further comments? I'll entertain all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the quarterly report. Mr. Serrano.
Chair, this is an informational item. No action is required. This just summarizes all the work that your staff has done during the last quarter. It summarizes the fiscal year end of our last budget and indicates what meetings we conducted during the last 3 months of the fiscal year. Chair, again, it's an informational item, so no action is required, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll open it public comment. Any online?
No, sir.
Any questions or comments from commissioners? Thank you. Okay, the next item is written correspondence. Is there anything you'd like to highlight, Mr. Serrano?
I'll just mention to the chair, to the commission that LAFCO staff is currently coordinating with our new auditor to provide them the necessary documents they need to conduct their audit. The goal is to receive our first ever audit later this year. And so that's something that these letters just indicate that they're going to start the process of auditing our last fiscal year. But again, this is an informational item. No action is required, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the public? Questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, seeing none, the next item are press articles. Anything that you'd like to highlight there?
No, sir. This is just informational item identifying articles that may be of interest to the commission, but no action is required. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Next item is commissioners' business. Is there anything the commissioners would like to bring to the commission? Seeing none. Our final item is adjournment.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.